My name is Sophia Reynolds. I am 33 years old. 19 years ago, my parents abandoned me on my grandfather's doorstep when I was only 6 years old, treating me like an inconvenience they could simply leave behind. That day changed everything for me. Right now, I am sitting in the packed community center in Cleveland, where the board of my grandfather's foundation is announcing the details of his estate and who will take over, and my parents have just walked in uninvited, their eyes locked on me with that same icy stare from all those years ago. The tension in the air is thick enough to cut with a knife, but I refuse to let them rewrite my story again. If you have ever been blindsided by family trying to take what is rightfully yours in front of everyone, please like this video and tell me your own experience in the comments. It really helps to know I am not the only one dealing with this kind of betrayal. Let me take you back so you can see exactly how we reached that moment in the community center 8 months after my grandfather passed. Victor Reynolds had built the foundation from the ground up, a network of local programs that helped families in Cleveland with everything from after-school tutoring to job training for folks left behind by the economy. He never made it flashy. It was always about quiet integrity and making sure the work actually reached people. I had spent 27 years learning at his side first, as the little girl he took in without hesitation, and later as the one he trusted to help run the day-to-day operations, once I finished college and started my own career as a customer success representative at a small tech firm downtown. The day he died, the house felt too quiet, the kind of silence that presses on your chest. I found him in his study glasses, still on a half-written note about the next grant cycle on the desk. There was no long illness, no hospital fight. It was sudden the way he always said life should be lived straight and honest. Within days, the board called an emergency meeting to handle the transition, and that was when the first whisper of trouble started. My older sister, Claire Reynolds, had flown in from out of town, and my best friend, Hannah Brooks, who had worked alongside me at the foundation for the last 4 years, kept texting me to stay strong. Hannah knew the real story. She had heard me talk about the abandonment more times than I could count over late-night coffees after board meetings. But my parents, Deborah Reynolds and Alan Reynolds, had been out of the picture for so long that I almost convinced myself they would stay away. They had their own polished image as successful consultants who traveled the country giving talks on family values and second chances. I had not spoken to them in 19 years, except for the occasional stiff holiday card. When the board meeting started that afternoon in the community center, I sat in the front row with Gregory Lang, my grandfather's longtime attorney, and Anthony Vargas, the advisor I had brought in to help with the legal side of the transition. Elena Torres, the board chair, was running the meeting with her usual efficiency, outlining how the foundation assets worth $250 million in trusts and properties would move forward under the terms of the will. Then the doors at the back opened. My mother walked in, first chin high in a tailored navy suit that made her look like she belonged on a stage rather than in a room full of people who actually did the work. My father followed close behind, his face set in that familiar expression of mild impatience he had worn the day they left me. My older sister gave a small nod that sent a chill down my spine. Hannah reached over and squeezed my hand under the table, but it was too late. The board members shifted in their seats, whispers rippling through the crowd like a wave. Gregory cleared his throat and tried to continue, but my mother stood up before he could get another sentence out. "Excuse me," she said, her voice carrying that smooth, practiced tone she used in her professional talks. "I think everyone here deserves to know the truth before we hand over control of something my father spent his whole life building." She turned toward me, eyes narrowing just enough to look concerned instead of vicious. "Sophia, after everything we sacrificed to give you a stable start with your grandfather, it is painful to see you positioning yourself to take the entire foundation. We only want what is fair for the family." The room went still. I felt the words land like a slap, sharp and personal, the kind that cuts deep because it twists the truth into something ugly. My grandfather had chosen me because I had stayed, because I had learned every lesson he taught about integrity and service instead of chasing the spotlight. But my mother made it sound like I had stolen something that was never mine. My father, who had always let her do the talking in the past, suddenly stood up beside her. His eyes widened in genuine shock at her wording. Then he interrupted her with a sharp, frustrated edge in his voice that made several board members lean forward. "Deborah, enough with the careful wording," he snapped. "The truth is simpler than that. We left her because we were young and unprepared, but that does not mean we should let her erase us now. She has been the one controlling access to the foundation accounts for the last 3 years. If anyone manipulated the old man, it was her." The tone was raw and accusatory, as if he had been holding on to resentment for decades and finally decided this was the moment to let it out. The room erupted in murmurs. Elena Torres called for order, but the damage was already spreading. Hannah whispered beside me, "Do not let them twist this. You have the letters, the records." She was right. My grandfather had written to me over 8 years, each note clear about his wishes, and Gregory had copies ready. But the public nature of the meeting meant the gossip would spread fast through Cleveland's tight-knit nonprofit circles. My older sister leaned in from her seat and added her own jab voice, low, but loud enough for the people nearby to hear. "You always did know how to play the victim card, Sophia. Grandpa felt sorry for you, that is all. It is time the family got what it deserves." I sat there pulse-hammering, feeling the weight of every eye in the room. The betrayal was not new, but hearing it laid out so casually in front of people who respected my grandfather's work made my stomach twist. My mother smiled that polished smile again and kept going, each sentence laced with the kind of cold sarcasm that sounded helpful on the surface. "We are not here to cause a scene, darling. We just want the board to consider a more balanced arrangement. After all, blood is blood, and you have had 27 years of his attention while we stepped back to let you grow." The psychological jab hit exactly where it hurt, reminding me of every holiday I spent wondering why my own parents never came back, every milestone my grandfather had celebrated alone with me. Gregory tried to steer the meeting back, presenting the first page of the will under the projector, but my father interrupted again with another unexpected twist, his voice rising in a way that shocked even my mother. "And if the board needs proof of the pressure she put on him in his final months, we have emails. Real ones." He pulled out his phone as if ready to show them right there. The move was so sudden and calculated that it left the entire room hanging on what would come next. That was when my mother turned to me directly, her tone dropping to a venomous whisper that still carried across the front rows. "You think you are the only one who matters here. You were always the one who never quite fit our perfect image. Now look at you, trying to hoard what should have been shared." The words were vicious, personal, delivered with that hidden contempt she had perfected over the years. My father gave a short, bitter laugh that was full of genuine frustration, then muttered loud enough for me to hear, "This is why we left in the first place, Deborah. She never knew when to stop pushing." The contradiction stunned me. One moment he was attacking me with her the next. He was turning the knife on her, too, like the whole thing was unraveling in real time, and neither of them could control the fallout. Hannah squeezed my hand harder, her face pale. My older sister just smirked from her seat, clearly enjoying the chaos she was helping create. Elena called a short break, but the damage was done. Board members were already pulling out their phones, whispers turning into conversations that would spread through the city by evening. I stood up, legs unsteady, and stepped into the hallway for air, my mind racing with the realization that this was only the beginning of their private coercion. As I leaned against the wall, my phone buzzed in my pocket. The screen lit up with a text from an unknown number, but I knew exactly who it was from. The message read, "We have more than emails. Meet us outside in 5 minutes or the board gets everything tonight." My stomach dropped. The threat hung there, sharp and immediate, turning the public scene into something far more dangerous behind closed doors. I pushed the door open and stepped into the dim parking lot where the streetlights flickered overhead. My parents were already waiting by a black SUV parked near the curb. My mother leaned against the hood with her arms crossed like she owned the whole evening. She spotted me first and straightened up, that polished smile sliding across her face as she closed the distance in 3 quick steps. "Sophia, darling, you really think you can keep playing the devoted granddaughter forever?" She said, her voice low but laced with cold sarcasm that made every word feel like a blade twisting just under the skin. "After all the years we gave you space to bond with your grandfather, this is how you repay us, by locking us out of what is rightfully family property." The words hit me square in the chest. Before I could respond, my father stepped forward with a reaction I never saw coming. His eyes widened in genuine shock at her tone. Then he interrupted her mid-sentence with a defensive outburst that cut through the air like a whip. "Deborah, for once in your life, stop twisting everything into your little narrative," he snapped. But then he turned to me, his expression shifting into something colder, more calculated. "The truth is simpler, Sophia. You are just like him, stubborn, controlling, always thinking. The foundation belongs only to the one who stayed. We left because we knew we could not compete with that kind of grip he had on you." My stomach twisted at the sudden pivot. Hannah had followed me out the side door, and she stopped a few feet away, her face pale as she watched the exchange. Elena Torres had stepped outside too, after calling the short break, her phone still in her hand, as she hovered near the entrance, clearly trying to decide whether to intervene. My mother recovered quickly, shooting my father a look that could have frozen the Ohio River in July, but she did not back down. Instead, she leaned in closer to me, her tone dropping to that venomous whisper she saved for when she wanted the words to burrow deep. "See what you have done. Even your own father cannot stand by your selfishness anymore. We have copies of emails from your grandfather's final 8 months notes, where he worried you were isolating him from the rest of the family. If the board sees those, or if the local news picks them up, how long do you think your precious customer success job at the tech firm will last?" The jab landed like another slap, exposing a fear I had buried for months. My father did not nod along this time. Instead, he gave a short, sharp sigh and physically stepped back toward the SU. His jaw clenched in quiet anger that he then turned into a private confrontation right there in front of everyone. "Enough of the threats, Deborah," he muttered loud enough for Hannah and Elena to hear. "But she does need to hear this part from me. Sophia, if you do not step aside and let the board consider a shared arrangement, we will make sure every donor knows exactly how you manipulated access to the accounts these last 4 years." Hannah moved closer to my side, her voice steady but urgent. "Sophia, do not engage. We have the original letters from your grandfather, the ones proving he chose you because you understood the mission. Anthony Vargas is inside right now, reviewing them with Gregory Lang." Elena cleared her throat from a few feet away, her expression tight. "This is not the place for family matters. The board reconvenes in 10 minutes, and I expect everyone to keep this professional." My mother ignored Elena completely and kept her eyes locked on me, delivering another cutting line laced with long-held resentment. "You think you are better than us because you stayed and played house with an old man's charity work. We built real careers while you hid behind his name. Step down gracefully or watch us tear that name apart in front of every grant recipient who ever benefited from the foundation." My father suddenly changed the subject in a way that felt deliberately frustrating, his voice dropping low as he glanced at Hannah and Elena before focusing back on me. "Forget the emails for a second. What about the fact that you never even invited us to the last 2 foundation galas? We heard from your older sister how you made sure the guest list kept us out. That kind of exclusion speaks volumes about your character." It was a complete pivot, pulling in a new angle that blindsided me because my older sister had not mentioned any of this inside yet. Here it was weaponized to make me look petty in front of witnesses. I stood there, pulse racing, the weight of their words pressing down until it felt hard to breathe. Hannah squeezed my arm, whispering, "They are bluffing. The will is ironclad." But I could see the uncertainty in Elena's eyes as she checked her watch and headed back inside. My parents exchanged one last loaded glance. Then my mother delivered the final jab before turning toward the door. 5 minutes until the board votes on the transition plan. Choose wisely, Sophia, or the only thing left of your grandfather's legacy will be the scandal we create tonight. The threat hung in the air like smoke, thick and choking. And as I watched them follow Elena back into the community center, I realized the private coercion had just become something far bigger. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, this time a message from an unknown number with a screenshot of an old email thread that looked damning if taken out of context. My stomach dropped. The board was about to reconvene, and I had no idea if the evidence I carried would be enough to stop the rapid collapse of everything I had built. Back inside the room, the tension was electric. Rebecca Klein, one of the newer board members who had volunteered with me on several grant reviews, leaned forward and spoke up in my defense. With respect, the will is clear, and we have reviewed the correspondence showing Victor's intent. But my mother cut her off with another vicious line, her eyes never leaving mine. Intent or not, blood should matter more than some handwritten notes from an old man who felt guilty. Sophia, you were always the one who never quite fit our perfect image, and now you are using that to hoard what should be shared. Marcus Hale, my co-worker from the tech firm who had also served as a foundation volunteer for the last 3 years, stood from his seat near the back and tried to intervene. This is getting personal, and it is not fair to Sophia or the mission, he said, his voice steady. The foundation has thrived under her leadership because she stayed and learned the work. My father turned on Marcus with quiet fury, his words coming out in a controlled but devastating jab. You are only defending her because you work with her downtown and benefit from the contacts she funnels your way. The real issue is that she never invited us to the last 2 foundation galas, making sure we stayed erased from the picture, while she played the devoted granddaughter for the cameras. Gregory Lang rose then, presenting the projector with the first of my grandfather's letters, his voice firm as he read the key lines aloud. To my granddaughter, you were never my duty. You were my choice, and the foundation belongs in hands that understand service over spotlight. The room quieted for a moment, hope flickering in my chest, but my mother recovered with a cutting laugh that was pure contempt. Those words proved nothing except that he felt sorry for the child we left behind. We have our own records showing how she pressured him in his final 8 months, limiting visitors and steering decisions. My father interrupted again in a way that felt deliberately shocking, his voice dropping to a low, intense tone as he addressed the board chair directly. Elena, if the board votes to keep her in full control, we will have no choice but to go public with what we know. The donors deserve transparency, and so does the family. The threat landed like a final ultimatum, and the room fell into heavy silence. The vote came back split, with enough board members swayed by the public pressure and the threat of scandal that they proposed a compromise I had dreaded. I would retain a minor advisory role, but my parents and my older sister would gain seats on the oversight committee, effectively diluting the control my grandfather had left me. My mother smiled that victorious smile, and my father delivered one last, shocking reaction, his eyes meeting mine with a mix of triumph and something almost regretful before he nodded in agreement to the board's terms. It was a calculated acceptance that sealed my defeat while pretending to offer peace. I felt the choice crystallize in that moment, the painful sacrifice I had to make to protect the foundation from total collapse. If I fought the compromise, the leaked emails and threats would explode into headlines that could scare away every donor and grant partner, destroying the programs my grandfather had built over decades. So I stood up, voice steady but heartbreaking, and told the board I accepted the new arrangement to keep the mission alive. The words tasted like ash, but I said them anyway. Hannah looked devastated. Marcus shook his head in disbelief, and Rebecca Klein offered a quiet nod of respect. But the weight of it all settled on me like a permanent loss. In the weeks that followed, the foundation continued its work. but I stepped back from the day-to-day leadership I had poured 27 years into watching from the sidelines as my parents inserted themselves into decisions with their polished consultant style. My older sister took an active role too, and the quiet isolation settled in deep. My tech job felt hollow now, the contacts tainted by the whispers that followed me everywhere in Cleveland. I had chosen to save the legacy by sacrificing my place in it, but the emotional heaviness never lifted. The family I had fought to distance myself from now held pieces of the one thing that had given me purpose, and the truth I had clung to felt smaller somehow. My grandfather's voice echoed in my mind during those quiet evenings, reminding me that integrity sometimes costs more than victory. I learned the hard way that standing for truth does not always mean winning the fight, and sometimes the deepest defeat comes from the choice that keeps the work alive at the expense of your own heart. The betrayal from my parents had forced me into a corner where walking away from full control was the only way to protect what mattered, and the loneliness that followed was the price I paid.